You know how everyone hyped up when Kesha sang TiK ToK at the AMAs like a month or two ago? I bet she knew that I was planning to do this series and that I was going to be taking people back to 2010, but she said, no, me first. I take them back to 2010 before you do. And to that I say, Kesha, congratulations, you beat me to the punch. Anyway, yes, welcome to 2020. This is the first video that I am doing this year, and it is being filmed on New Year's Day, so Happy New Year, everyone. And it is the beginning of a new series that I have been telling you guys I was planning to do. I didn't want to say what it was, but here it is, 10 years later. As I'm sure you guys can tell, this is a series that I will be doing throughout the 2020s to go back in time and talk about albums from the 2010s that were either important to me, maybe important to music in general, or just albums that I feel are worth revisiting whether or not they are good or bad. Again, this isn't just going to be me celebrating albums from the 2010s. Sometimes I will be talking about some bad ones. I'm probably going to limit this series to just talking about 2010s albums only because the 2010s were the big decade where I actually started to pay bigger attention to music, and I wasn't reviewing albums as long in this decade, so there could be a little bit more to talk about. Whereas if I continue this series way into the future to talk about 2020's albums, I'll probably just be repeating the reviews that you guys will be seeing throughout the 2020s. So this will be limited to 2010's albums, but still, I thought it'd be something to have some fun with, just to try something and try to add a little more content other than strictly reviews. So let's give it a try. And the first album that I will be talking about, of course, as you can tell by the title, is Kesha's 2010 debut album, Animal. Kesha, if you guys don't know, is a pretty big pop star that was huge way back in 2010, releasing top 10 hit after top 10 hit. This album alone had 4 of them. She was easily one of the biggest hit makers of the beginning of the decade. This was her debut album, fittingly released on New Year's Day. What a way to kick off a new decade. Now, my personal experiences with Kesha are mostly limited. I know of a lot of the singles, and I listened to her 2017 album Rainbow, which you can check out my old review of at the link in the description, but I'm not totally familiar with her entire discography. When this album dropped in 2010, I remember casually enjoying some of the songs, but I was never totally engaged with a lot of her material. When it came to making this video, it was the first time I really listened to the album, and it was 50 minutes long, which was a little beefy for a pop record, but nevertheless, I was interested to see what Kesha could offer and whether her debut still holds up nicely 10 years later. As it is, listening to it in its entirety did a nice job of teleporting me back to 2010 when I was just in 6th grade. As for the record itself, well, there are certainly some bumps, but it is pretty solid, and I'm actually a bit surprised to say that because there are quite a few tracks on this thing that feel like they were made specifically for the landscape of music to come in 2010. Singles like Your Love Is My Drug, TiK ToK, and Blah 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 feel like they belong in 2010. The electro-pop production of them kind of set the tone for what we'd hear out of artists like Lady Gaga and Katy Perry throughout the year. Take It Off feels like it's a song that was made specifically for the club, as the bouncy bass drum heavy instrumentals on the song feel like they were made in a room filled with strobe lights and people just jumping up and down rapidly. It's the kind of song you could probably hear at many an EDM festival. Same thing goes for the track Boots and Boys, which even has an EDM style build-up that goes along with so many other dancey instrumentals. I was also drawn to the track VIP, a bonus song included with the deluxe edition of the album, as the electronic instrumental has some really excellent bounce that I think still sounds great today. While electropop is really at the center of this thing, Kesha does get a chance to try dipping her toes into a few other styles. The hilariously titled Party at a Rich Dude's House actually sees Kesha lean more into a rock style, with some heavy guitars and a pounding drum beat, and even if it's not one of the most compelling songs on the album, it is a good breakup between all the dance pop. Blind also feels like it tries to mix some of the electropop styles with some pop rock. 2 mixed results, but again, it's a good effort and a nice change of pace from all the club bangers. Now, while a lot of the production isn't really the most groundbreaking stuff, and even today I don't see it as that groundbreaking, what really gives some of these songs an edge is Kesha's undeniable charisma. Nothing about this album really screams depth if we're talking about lyrics. I'm sure we can have a field day talking about the lyrics of this thing, but But as goofy and adolescent as a lot of these songs are, Kesha delivers the lyrics with an unabashed and exciting performance almost each and every time. She's layered heavily with auto-tune on a track like TiK ToK, but her vocals still carry their way very nicely over a tune. That impression shows also with Blah Blah Blah, where Kesha handily outperforms 303, who never really feels like they belong on a track like this. I personally got a kick out of some of the lyrics on the track Steven, like the light ass knocker pants and I watched your ugly girlfriend sneer across the room. And the song is light enough that it allows Kesha to show more of her vocal potential, even if the auto-tune tries its best to weigh down on that. Even a song like Blind feels like it's trying to drown Kesha in some weird auto-tune filters, but she still shows us that she has enough charisma to spare all throughout the album. And while auto-tune does get very prevalent here, Kesha at least gets a few moments to really shine vocally, like on the track Hungover, which feels light enough for Kesha's vocals to demand all of the attention. I also personally really love the emotional feel of the track Dancing with Tears in My Eyes, which despite having some electronic energy and feeling a bit danceable, actually ticks a box as being a pretty emotional, rather beautiful track that really strips away a lot of the auto-tune to create a great showcase of Kesha's many vocal talents. Same goes for the standard edition of the album's closer, the title track Animal, where Kesha crafts a more contained and again very nice love song that finishes the album nicely. Now, I mostly enjoyed a good deal of what was on this album. Even though I mentioned it wasn't groundbreaking and there wasn't much in the way of lyrical depth, I feel like Kesha more than made up for it with vocal charm and still interesting production, but there are certainly some lowlights on this thing. Of course, it is 15 tracks in about 50 minutes, so there is just a little bit of filler on the record. The track Kiss and Tell drowns out Kesha's vocals with the overly loud video game-esque instrumentals to the point where it sounds like she's kind of competing with the instrumentals to see who will get more of the attention. I also feel like the track Backstabber doesn't mix some of its elements as harmoniously to the point where the reverb and the auto-tune of Kesha's voice on the hook sounds more annoying than exciting. And before listening to this, I had heard many people talking about how bad the track Dinosaur was, and oh gosh, yes it is. Sonically, it's easily one of Kesha's most annoying songs to date, one that can't even be saved by her own charisma. And while I understand the song is supposed to describe a creepy old man, I think it kind of does that a little bit too well. Kesha says on the song that she's about to barf, and yeah, so was I when I heard it. Overall though, as I'm sure you can reasonably expect out of a debut record, Kesha's Animal does have some cracks in the road. The middle stretch is a bit uneven, and while much of the album seems content to drown out Kesha's beautiful vocals with autotune, forcing her to kind of fight through it, Kesha regularly proves that she's still up for the challenge, and she shows us time and time again that her vocals are wonderful. A few of the deep cuts don't quite hit as hard as the singles do, but what I hear when listening to this album is signs of greatness. Kesha taps into some interesting electropop instrumentals, and what the album lacks in depth, it makes up for with earwormy hooks, mostly sticky production, and very charismatic performances. Yes, it's mindless, and it definitely feels like an album that was made for bratty teenagers, but there's plenty of compelling pop tracks that hold up nicely here. It may not blow you away, and if you go back to listen to it now, it might not be revolutionary, but it still does a nice job with the tools at its disposal. If I had to pick favorite tracks, I would say Your Love Is My Drug, TiK ToK, Take It Off, Steven, Hungover, Dancing with Tears in My Eyes, Animal, and VIP. And if I had to pick least favorites again, I would say Kiss and Tell, Backstabber, and Dinosaur. I wasn't sure how I was gonna rate these, if I was going to give them a rating. I'm not really going to, but I guess I could say what I would rate them. Had I listened to this back in 2010, my 11-year-old self might not have been fully willing to admit that he liked this album, given that he wasn't that big into pop music at the time. But today I can say I do enjoy this, and I guess I would probably give it a good rating if I did review it. It's not the most compelling blend of pop that I've heard, but as a debut album from a then rising star, it overcomes its cracks in the road and does a really solid job. I know Kesha has grown a lot from this record, but nevertheless, it's still kind of fun to go back to and listen to just to see what 2010 sounded like, because it certainly sounded a lot like this. But that's my thoughts on the album 10 years later. What do you guys think about it? Do you love it? Do you hate it? Are you indifferent towards it? And I guess the question that I'll be asking a lot throughout this series is, what are your personal experiences with the record? Did you listen to it back in 2010? Did you not listen to it until now? Are you going to listen to it because I talked about it? Tell me all your fun stories, or not so fun stories if you're willing to tell those, that you've had related to this record. Tell me all about your middle school or high school dances where they were blasting TiK ToK or Your Love Is My Drug, because trust me, I had more than a few middle school dances where they blasted TiK ToK. Just give me your stories series with this album? Leave them down in the comments. Let's keep this civil and have some fun. If you guys want to hit like and subscribe, thank you. If not, I totally get it. For what's next in this series, I think I've got about a month to wait, but I will be looking at Lil Wayne's Rebirth. Like I said, this series wasn't going to be entirely devoted to great albums. Until then, I think January is going to actually have some pretty exciting albums for me to review, so stay tuned for those. Until then, thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you liked the idea behind this series, and I hope you possibly suggest some more albums for me to look at from the 2010s. And I will see you guys in the next video. Peace.